I knew the exact total before I even got in line. $38.41. I'd done the math 3 times, checked my balance 4. I had just enough, not a cent more. Bread, baby formula, frozen vegetables, and the cheap brand of diapers that never quite fit right. My daughter was on my hip, squirming. People behind me were impatient, and then it happened. Card declined. I tried again. Same beep, same error. I could feel my face turning red before I even opened my mouth. The cashier looked sorry. The man behind me looked annoyed. I started pulling items from the cart, prioritizing survival over comfort. Diapers stayed, juice went, formula stayed, fruit gone. I didn't cry, not yet, just apologized like I'd broken something. And then I heard him, calm, direct, not loud, but enough to stop the room. Bag it all. I've got it. I looked up. The man behind me was holding out his card. And what he handed me after that, not just groceries, but an envelope, would change the next 6 months of my life. My name's Tessa. I'm 29, and for the last 2 years it's just been me and my daughter, Lila. She's 4. She loves dinosaurs, peanut butter sandwiches, and singing off-key to the Frozen soundtrack at full volume. She doesn't understand the words overdraft fee or past due balance. She just wants to know if we can get the cereal with the cartoon elephant on the box. I always smile. I always say, maybe next time. I didn't plan to be a single mom. I didn't plan to start over with 2 suitcases, a toddler, and a part-time job cleaning offices at night. But after Lila's father left, and after I realized he wasn't coming back, not really, I packed up and moved us into a tiny 1-bedroom apartment with peeling paint, squeaky floors, and a rent I could barely afford. I worked. I hustled. I budgeted every cent. Some weeks we were okay. Most weeks, we weren't. But I didn't ask for help. I was stubborn, proud, determined to do it on my own. And that's how I ended up in that checkout line on a rainy Thursday night, tired, embarrassed, and completely unprepared for what was about to happen. The truth is, I thought I had it covered. I'd worked 2 double shifts that week, skipped lunch, walked to work instead of taking the bus. I knew exactly how much was in my account, $42.06, so I planned a trip that would cost me $38.41. Essentials only: bread, eggs, milk, diapers, frozen peas, oatmeal. 1 treat, a small juice box pack for Lila's lunch. I triple-checked everything in the cart, recounted as the cashier scanned. I was calm, focused, until she ran my card, declined. My stomach dropped. I tried again, slowly, silently. Declined. The woman behind the counter looked at me with soft eyes, but the line was growing. The couple behind me whispered. Lila tugged on my jacket. I opened my phone. Refresh. Refresh. Balance. $2.11. I forgot about the phone bill. I started removing items, quietly. First the juice, then the vegetables, then the cereal. One by one, I placed them aside, swallowing my pride like a stone in my throat. "I'm sorry," I mumbled. "I'll just take these, that's all I need." My daughter, sensing the shift, went still. That silence, that awkward watching silence from everyone in line, it stays with you. But what happened next? That stays with you too. I don't remember what the cashier said exactly. She was kind, the kind of quiet, practiced kindness that tries not to embarrass you more than you already are. But it didn't matter. The moment had already cracked something open. The line behind me was still growing. People were shifting, sighing, avoiding eye contact like watching me struggle would somehow make their day harder. I kept apologizing. "I'm so sorry, just the bread then, and the milk. I'll come back for the rest." No one spoke. Even Lila stayed quiet, which made it worse. Normally she'd whine or chatter, but she must have felt the shift in my voice, in my body. I couldn't even look at her. I stared at the register like if I focused hard enough, maybe it would just clear. It didn't. I was down to the bare minimum. 3 items, a plastic bag half full, my pride in pieces. And then, right as I reached for the last item to put it back, the formula, I heard a voice behind me. "Don't take anything else off. I've got it." At first I didn't understand. I turned, expecting someone to be talking to the cashier. But he was looking at me. A man in his late 30s, maybe early 40s, worn jeans, gray button-down, calm eyes. A face I didn't recognize. "Excuse me?" I asked, already shaking my head. "It's covered," he said again. "All of it. Just let her ring it through." The cashier paused, looked at me for confirmation. I was already stammering. No, really, I can't let you." "It's okay," he said gently. "It's not a handout, it's a moment. Just let it happen." Then he handed the cashier his card and nodded once, like he'd done this before. The groceries were paid for in seconds. I stood there, stunned, holding Lila's tiny hand with one hand and the plastic bag with the other, still half expecting someone to take it all back. "Thank you," I whispered. "I don't even know your name." He smiled. "No, just barely. You don't need to. Just promise me something." I nodded. "When it's your turn to help someone else, do it." And just like that, he handed me a small white envelope, turned, and walked out into the rain. No speech, no praise, no waiting for a thank you. He disappeared into the parking lot like he'd never been there at all. I stood there with the receipt in one hand and the envelope in the other. My legs were shaking, my eyes burning. My daughter asking softly, "Mommy, are we okay now?" I knelt down and hugged her tight. "Yeah, baby," I whispered, "we're okay." But I hadn't opened the envelope yet, and when I finally did, it wasn't just kindness inside. It was something that would change everything. The envelope felt heavier than it looked, plain white. No writing on the outside, just sealed carefully, like someone had taken their time, like it was meant to be opened later in private. I didn't open it right there in the store. I finished bagging my groceries with trembling hands, thanked the cashier again, though she looked just as surprised as I felt, and walked out into the drizzle with Lila clutching my fingers and dragging her stuffed lion behind her, like it had seen the worst of the world too. The man was gone. I scanned the lot, hoping to catch a glimpse of him, maybe thank him properly. But his car, his face, everything had vanished like it was never there. Just the envelope remained. We got home. I dried Lila's hair, made her a snack, and turned on a cartoon so she could unwind. Then I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope like it might disappear if I blinked. Finally, I opened it. Inside was $300 in cash. 6 crisp $50 bills, folded together and neatly tucked behind a piece of stationery with no letterhead. Just a short, handwritten message. "This isn't charity. It's a thank you. From someone who's been in your shoes and never forgot what it felt like. Use it to breathe. You don't owe me anything." I read it twice before I started crying. Not quiet tears, not graceful, movie-style crying. The kind of crying that comes from being seen, really seen, in a moment when you've convinced yourself you've become invisible. that $300 did more than pay for groceries. It covered what my next paycheck couldn't: a doctor's visit for Lila, gas for 2 weeks, a replacement backpack for her daycare cubby after her old one ripped in the rain. It gave me something I hadn't felt in months: breathing room. And even more than that, it gave me hope. But I couldn't stop wondering, who was he and why me? Because something about the way he looked at me, like he knew, made me wonder if our paths had crossed long before either of us knew it. And a few days later, I found out they had. I couldn't stop thinking about him. Not in the way you think about a crush or a savior, but in the way you think about a chapter in your life you didn't expect to reread, one you thought had closed years ago. The envelope, the look in his eyes, the words in the note, from someone who's been in your shoes. It stayed with me. A few days later, I went back to the store, not to find him, just to see if maybe someone knew something. Maybe the cashier had seen what car he drove. Maybe there was a clue. The manager on duty was a younger guy, friendly. I asked if there had been any customer complaints or reports about a man paying for someone else's groceries. He raised an eyebrow. "This happened to you?" Tall guy, wore a gray button-down. "That's probably Dan. He's done that before." I blinked. "Dan?" He pointed to a small flyer by the bulletin board near the exit. A quiet, modest ad for Reed & Sons Roofing and Repair. Daniel Reed. The name rang loud in my ears. I walked over and scanned the flyer. Local contractor, homegrown business, family-owned. Nothing flashy. But the last name? Reed. And then it hit me. Back when I was 19, young, broke, and scared out of my mind, I lived in a women's shelter for a few months, pregnant, alone, trying to figure out how to become a mother when I still barely felt like a person. There was a man who came by twice that winter, quiet, worked on fixing the roof after a storm. Never spoke much, but once I saw him drop off a stack of pizza boxes for the girls inside and leave without saying a word. I remember someone whispering, "That's Daniel Reed. Grew up in the system. Comes back every year. Never wants credit." I didn't think he ever noticed me. But maybe he did. I called the number on the flyer, not to return the money, not even to say thank you, just to let him know what it meant. I left a voicemail. "Hi, I think we crossed paths at the grocery store last week. You paid for my groceries. You left an envelope. And I just wanted you to know, it didn't just help me. It reminded me I'm not alone, and someday I hope I get to do that for someone else." He never called back. But 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just a note inside. "You will." I never saw him again. Not in person, not in the store, not at the shelter where I later tried to leave a donation in his name. But that note, "You will," stayed with me like a promise I didn't realize I'd already started to fulfill. The money he gave didn't last forever. But what it sparked, that stayed. It gave me enough stability to breathe for the first time in months. And from that space, I made real changes. I applied for a local skills training program, took online bookkeeping classes from my phone during late-night laundry loads and snack breaks. 3 months later, I landed a remote part-time job at a local business doing invoices and scheduling. Not glamorous, but steady, honest, mine. I was able to move us into a 2-bedroom unit with a working heater and a lock that didn't jam. And every week since, when I go to that same grocery store, I bring a little extra. Not much, just enough to make sure I can cover someone else, if the moment comes. And last Friday it did. A woman ahead of me, flustered and tired, tried the card reader 3 times before her face collapsed in quiet apology. I didn't wait. I stepped forward and said, "Don't take anything off, I've got it." She looked at me like I was magic, but I wasn't. I was just next in line in a story that started long before me, with a stranger, an envelope, and a man who knew exactly what it meant to be seen. I don't know where Daniel Reed is now. Maybe he's still out there, watching, listening for the sound of a card decline. Maybe he knows what he started. Maybe he doesn't. But because of him, because of that moment in the checkout line, my daughter and I found more than food and money that day. We found dignity. We found our footing again. And I made a quiet promise. When it's my turn to help someone else, I will. It doesn't take much to change someone's life. Sometimes it's just $38.41 and a person willing to say, "I've got you." He didn't want thanks. He didn't want recognition. He just wanted someone to breathe again. And now I do.